Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It is me, Rich, and this is the one you've all been waiting for, the Talking Tactics show. We've built it up for the last few days, and yeah, I mean, our lucky streak is still on, Gareth. And what a game to dissect from Saturday.
Yeah, very much so. I seem to sort of say it week on week, but it almost comes across like again, it was never really in doubt, was it? From the moment we started, the confidence was high. You just got that vibe. Even watching it on the TV, you got that vibe that we were going to do well. You just got that sort of vibe, and from the first 20 seconds when Watkins hit the post, I mean, it was on.
Absolutely, mate. It was just a fantastic performance. And we're going to go into so much detail. We've got our usual slides in terms of our passing networks, our XG, our X threat. We've got features that you've took so much time into, mate. I mean, the appreciation into the time that you take to go into the analysis is phenomenal, mate. So yeah, amazing on that. We talk about Watkins, we talk about Buendia, we talk about how we matched up Newcastle and kind of dominated them essentially. And then we're going to cover the older XG argument, and I'm going to let you run wild with it. But it's not just the normal. We're going to go a little bit deeper and kind of really go into why it's important and how clubs can really utilize it and why it's useful for them, not in terms of like deciding games or kind of basing all of their tactical know-how on, but just as a metric, as you were kind of explaining, Gareth, a metric to measure performance and to see trends.
Exactly
So
that. It's
yeah.
exactly that. Yeah, it's a metric in isolation on its own. We're just gonna sort of try and explain a little bit to people how, like I say, you've just summed it up really, and how we use it, sort of, or how I would use it in a sort of club setting to analyze performance. And I think people are a little bit caught up on sort of a certain video that was put out, and I think certain words have been used, and maybe not rightly or wrongly, whichever way you want to use it. But we're just going to try and explain it a little bit more, and hopefully people get a bit more of a better understanding.
Awesome. Well, before we dive in, please hit that like button. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're new. We are 21 subscribers away from 1,300. So that would be amazing to get that. I think we hit 1,200 last week, so 100 in a week would be crazy. So please help us continue to grow. Comment on anything that you've seen. Some of the comments coming in are fantastic. Questions that Gareth getting a great. So yeah, please do comment on anything that you see in the show, anything you want Gareth to look into, and yeah, continue to help this channel grow. So first of all, our usual passing networks. What are we seeing here in terms of kind of the sort of way that we set up and the types of passes that we've got? Not the usual, from my kind of looking at it here, not the usual high passing between Martinez, Mings, and Konsa.
No, I mean, we know that Newcastle like to press reasonably high, I mean, and with quite intensity. So I think Unai was quite wary of that. We changed the shape today. It was a more of a 4-2-3-1 with Dendoncker and Louise in the double pivot, as opposed to the standard 4-4-2, what we've been seeing. And I think we can see what it is. You know, you can see the two holding midfielders, Louise and Dendoncker. And we know that Dendoncker was a little bit more deeper on average than what Louise was. They did alternate, but, you know, it was more Dendoncker was in for that role to sit in front of those midfield, the back two, sorry, and just be compact in its shape. And I think we can see like a nice sort of decent average position, really. And I think Buendia is the point here. I think we can tell, we'll get onto it later, spent most of his time in and around that centre circle.
Yeah, and also I think Watkins as well, nice and high. And obviously, yeah, we're going to cover Watkins as well. You know, that obviously clearly shows he was playing off the shoulder of the centre halves.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was sort of, you're trying to make that pitch as long as you possibly can, really, even out of possession. And I think Watkins, what better centre forward could you have had in the game to put pressure? He caused absolute havoc.
Yeah, awesome. And then we'll talk about the XG and X threat in this particular game. So just talk us through kind of the shot map. I mean, you know, again looking at that, it's just some really good quality chances created in the box.
Yeah, and I think more importantly, it's the locations of them shots,
Yeah.
all inside the width almost of the 6-yard box. Even if you're outside the box, you've only got two really that you could see that are outside the width of the 18-yard box. And McGinn's one is right at the top of the screen there, under the 1.93 for anyone who's is interested. But yeah, all central locations, really good chances. Not necessarily massively high XG chances, but that's because Newcastle had bodies in the way, so that creates sort of like that bit more of a sort of a lesser number, if you will. But yeah, the location to the shot I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, and do you know what else I really liked? And Moreno is growing every game into his role, but it was great to see whether it's a fullback or whether it's a winger, but getting to the byline, getting past that fullback and cutting it back or cutting it across the box, and something that Villa fans haven't really been used to too much over the years.
Yeah, I think he was. I think it was noticeable that he was quite aggressive on the ball, more so than normal. I think you're dead right. He wanted to hit that byline. He wasn't really putting crosses in so much. He was willing to take on Trippier at any time. And I think as much as Trippier is a very good set piece, sort of, set pieces. His defending at some when put under pressure is questionable, and he got beat time after time. And it was what it is. But yeah, the aggressive nature of Moreno was key, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Quick look at our XG timeline. I mean, mate, it was just a dream performance, to like dominant from start to finish. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think
What else are we going to say about it?
yeah, and this is why sort of you analyze the stills that we use and the video and also the data as well, because we want to see that one matches up with the other. And I think it's clear to everyone who watched the game, even on match of the day with the highlights, you could see that this, everything is reflective of that. And yeah, I mean, chance upon chance, especially we started really well. I mean, look at that Ollie Watkins chance. That was a 0.32 XG chance in the early minutes of the game, within the first 20 seconds of the game. And that's how we carried on. We started well. He would have wanted us to start well, and we did. We carried it on, and 2 goals in the second half as well.
Yeah, yeah, and watching it, unfortunately I couldn't get to the game, but watching it from home, playing against a quality side like Newcastle, even at 2-0, you are thinking they get a goal, they can get back in it. And in Newcastle, once they get a goal, it's a bit like a train, isn't it? They just keep going and going and kind of can steamroll you. But
Yeah, I
great
mean,
to get that third goal. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I said to myself sitting there, I said, we're going to need a second here because you just think they're going to score. But as the time went on, you could sort of see how the pattern of the game was panning out. And Newcastle, sort of, for me, it was quite a surprise because I expected a draw. I think a draw would have been a decent result for Villa. But given where we were, why wouldn't we not want to win the game? And I think, we just needed that second goal. Yeah, we'd have liked it earlier,
Yeah.
before half time, essentially. But it didn't really matter in the end, did it?
No, no, no. And sometimes scoring that second on mid 60 minutes just kind of stops any momentum. Like sometimes if you score two in the first half and then they get a goal right at the start of the second half, you really are back sensible. But 2 goals to score 2 or 3 in the last 15, 20 minutes is a tough ask. So
Yeah, I
and
mean,
yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, you go.
I was just going to say that. I mean, in my notes here, I've written could have been 3 or 4 up in the first half.
Yeah.
So I mean, to write that is it was obviously quite sort of noticeable, and it was just a shame that we didn't sort of do it in the first half. But like I say, at the end, it just didn't matter, did it? We got it done in the end.
Exactly, and this highlights just the dominance of our threat across the game. And that timeline of it. Interestingly, we scored when Newcastle had kind of had their sort of best moment, which is interesting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly
Yeah.
that. And it's quite. I mean, I don't think anybody. It's not quite dreamland stuff, but it's almost like given the form that Newcastle are in and the way that you would expect them to come to Villa Park in the form that they're in, to see sort of these XG timelines and the expected threat that we created and everything throughout the game, it's almost quite surprising in a way.
Honestly, it was crazy. I was the same as you, Matt. I was like, I'll take a draw now, but whatever happened, the stars aligned, the crowd was up for it. I think some of the build up had said that it fairly it was going to be a close game, but one that, would be a real test for Villa. And I think the players would just responded to that test, and it was just so good to see. And for whatever happened, for whatever reason, it was just that Newcastle just couldn't respond to it.
No.
They had the opportunity to kind of play at their best, and it would have been a fantastic game if that would have happened. But they just kind of crumbled, a bit like what they did to us at St James's.
Yeah, it almost was a bit like that, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, I think we should sort of give a shout out really to everyone who was at the game, because I think the atmosphere was one of the best that I've heard in a long time, and they really sort of did push them along nicely.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Well, let's get into the analysis, because, like I say, mate, you've spent a lot of time doing this, and it's brilliant stuff. And we're going to cover, like I say, Buendia's movement, how we match them up, and a lot on Ollie Watkins as well. I mean, why not? I mean, we've got to cover him. He was just phenomenal. So, yeah. While I'm just getting the screen up, please do hit that like button. Please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help us to grow. Yeah, keep producing shows like this. So yes, mate, take it away in terms of, first of all, how we set up and how we kind of frustrated and matched up against Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle sort of almost went man for man across midfield, and with sort of Guimaraes just sort of sitting a little bit deeper, really. But it was where this sort of game, we saw that Villa box midfield really cause problems, and they did not get to grips with it at all from the first minute until the 95th. They just did not get to grips with it, and they couldn't decide whether to sort of switch on a double pivot, whether Luiz or Dendoncker would go. They didn't know whether to press high. They didn't have the numbers to press Konsa and Mings up top together. So what did they do? Gordon and Murphy, they just couldn't cope with the width of the fullbacks, knowing that Young was not going to go, but yet Moreno was. What did they do? And they just didn't get to grips with it at all. And as we can see, that you've got the three central midfielders, Guimaraes, Willock and Joe Linton. Now they're having to mark Dendoncker and Luiz, but what do they do with Buendia and Ramsey? There's one man marking two. And then you've got the issue of McGinn. And McGinn was really key in this, because he almost not quite had a free role, but I think if everyone would notice, he roamed across that defensive line in between, creating spaces. When Buendia went in, he come up high. And it was really sort of good to see. There was a lot of rotation in there to this game.
Yeah, it was just phenomenal. Some of the movement, and you see the confidence going, like flowing through them when they were doing it. It was just a joy to watch. Absolutely. So you wanted to talk about the Buendia effect. You just touched on it a little bit there. So yeah, we've got a couple of parts to this, but what are we seeing on this first
Yeah,
part
so
here?
we're going to see two slides that are sort of seconds apart, really. And I was really clever of me, really, to sort of manage to get this in, because it was just more luck than judgment, really. But you
Good
could
stuff.
see, you could see what was opening up in the centre of midfield. And remember when we referred back to the passing network, that we saw Buendia's average position was in and around that centre circle. And this just proves it sort of right almost. And the ball's going to get played out. I think it gets played to Luiz, back to Mings or Konsa. I cannot remember
Yeah.
and then gets played back into Buendia. But if we move on the next slide, we'll sort of kind of see what's going to transpire, as it were. So he's basically played a 1-2 with John McGinn, and he's in. And I can't remember whether this was for the goal or not. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think this might have been for McGinn's, maybe his shot. I can't remember.
No, it was the
Yeah.
goal. It was the goal, because they end up playing together, I think, on the edge of the box, I think.
Right.
Maybe not. Anyway, the things he'll say is the same. And what we're going to pick up again on later is Ollie Watkins. And we can still see Ollie Watkins off the back of that centre half. Time after time after time he got in that channel. And it's good to see players getting forward, really.
Yeah, and you just look at the players, the Villa players that are ahead of the midfield as well. Like it's crazy, like the midfield of Newcastle and the pressure, because obviously Target's got to come out here to press. That just leaves a massive gap for Buendia to run through. If this centre half comes across here, then McGinn can play the ball over the top into Watkins. So the options there are just amazing. So yeah, brilliant movement. And moving on to the Watkins. I know we've got a couple of. Oh, sorry, we're going to go into how the double pivot worked. Sorry, on this part. So yeah, just in terms of how we set up with Luiz and Dendoncker just controlling it.
Yeah, we got sort of, like I said to you earlier, sort of about the double pivot. There was a lot of sort of, again, interchanging of Dendoncker and Louise. And I think Louise was obviously, I think we all know, he's probably fair to say he's the better ball player. You know, he can pick a pass out on the ball. And Dendoncker was sort of more there to sort of cover spaces and just sort of hovering behind there. But again, here we can see Dendoncker sort of a little bit higher. But what's important here is Ramsey, Buendia, and McGinn all across, all in behind and in front of that Newcastle sort of midfield and in front of the defensive line. And again, look who we can see running off the ball, Ollie Watkins.
Yeah.
Again, off of that shoulder off of that centre half. And it's important to get players in behind there. And as I said before, Newcastle, they just did not get to grips with that box midfield at all.
Yeah, well, it's a perfect scenario, isn't it? Because you've got Watkins here stretching the back line, which should create space for these three in here. And then if one of these midfielders has to press the ball, which I'm sure they will, like if Joe Linton does it, it goes into Dendoncker, then into the one of the front three here. Or if Bruno Guimaraes does it, then Louise just pops a little ball through here, and then we're Buendia's in like boatloads of space. So
Yeah.
it was just almost like the perfect scenario for us
It
in
was,
terms
yeah,
of
and it
tactically.
happened time and time again because,
Yeah,
with Ashley Young not going forward, Gordon's not sure what to do because he's essentially a free man almost. He hasn't. You
yeah,
can see that he's not marking anyone as such. He knows that Ashley Young's not going to go forward, but to get those three players, this is perfect for a manager. You want those three players that you're attacking midfielders, as it were, behind the midfield, but in front of that back four. So you've got essentially, like you said, three options on the ball there.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk. I think we're talking Watkins now. Oh, no, wrong slide. Yeah, so we've got Watkins running off the ball. We've got a few parts to this, and again, like he deserves the feature about him because he was just so good.
Yeah, he was. His running off the ball was tireless. Even if you notice that when balls weren't going his way, he was stretching that back line to create space for Buendia just to sit where he is there. You can see Buendia again in that sort of in and around that centre circle area. And that's where you want your playmaker to be. You've got your centre forward stretching the play so you could play a long ball. This is the chance, by the way, that I was talking about in the 20-something minute, I think it was, and where he hit the post. And so the tone was already set. But he's running in that channel in between Trippier and was it Botman on that side? I think it's Botman on that side of Shah. It was constant.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then again, we'll go on to the next slide and just more focus on him on his running off the ball. Yeah, we've got. I think this one's just after 1-0, 16 minutes. We've got him here. I think this is the same situation with that double pivot. Yeah, he's running in behind off the back of Shah, and he exploited this area between Trippier and Shah quite a lot, particularly in the first half.
Yeah, and this is what I talk about when we look for trends. Even in a single game scenario, we're looking for trends and everything as post-match analysis, if you like. So if we were working for somebody else, we could say that Villa like to do this, and this is exactly what happened here. Time and time again, he targeted that channel, not only in the first half, but he also did it in the second half, more so in the second half. So I do wonder whether he was told anything at half time that this is where you're going to get your most success. But yeah, nothing more to be said, time and time again.
Yeah, and again, Moreno high up, causing a problem for Trippier because what does he do? Particularly as Murphy's really tucked in here. So yeah, ideal scenario for us.
Yeah.
And then moving on, we've got again part 3. I think this is into the second half here.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, mate.
Sorry, this is what I'm getting confused with earlier. This was the goal. So this was McGinn. So people can read the text for themselves, but this is actually a replay. So the goal is already 1-0, but this is the replay at 2-0, if you get what I'm saying. So yeah, movement in behind, and John McGinn again, off the ball, different sort of game from him, I thought, sort of more sort of a lot of off the ball running, not so much involved, but a lot of off the ball running and the tireless work. And yeah, pops it into Ollie Watkins, lays it off to McGinn and out to Moreno and back into for the Ollie Watkins goal. So it was just brilliant to see. And you can see they're stretching them time and time again. Sort of 3 different players there stretching them.
Yeah, just look at the gaps here. It's just, I know Newcastle went for it quite a bit, but yeah, it was just we just completely completely outplayed them. And I think Dendoncker, as the physicality in that midfield, was a bit of a masterstroke, to be honest, because he kind of helped us to have that extra body in midfield and just win the ball, or just be a presence in there to help the ball players, play. Because I was slightly concerned about the physicality, but yeah, we coped with it really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, once Bailey was sort of out, I think everybody expected Traore to come straight in, and that would be that. But yeah, a bit of a surprise selection. But again, what a masterstroke by him.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'll just come back off of this for a second, while we talk. We're gonna go on to a little bit of XG talk, because it was quite vociferous, the kind of chatter on Twitter about how well had Villa been performing, had they been overperforming, had they been underperforming, were they lucky, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, before we go into kind of the slides that you've got just explaining the detail that you're going into, just give us a from an analyst point of view, XG and what it's used for, mate.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I should say that I think the use of certain words in videos is what has got people's backs up. The word lucky is basically what's got people's backs up, and whether your viewpoint on that is right or wrong, that's your opinion. But it's not quite. It is that, but there's a better way maybe of sort of getting it across to Villa fans. Are a little bit. I think every fan is a little bit like that with a stat, especially XG. And not everybody likes it. Not everybody sort of wants to be involved. They just want to watch the game, and they want the result is the final score, and it is what it is, and they accept that and they move on. But from an analyst perspective, we can't just work like that. We have to sort of know the stat performances and sort of whether it's an overperformance, if it's an underperformance. It goes seasonal long. It's not just XG. XG is a stat on its own, which measures shot quality. It's as simple as that. Whether people want to use shots on target or whether, that's up to them. But for a longer sort of perspective and analysing players for recruitment, for management purposes and everything else like that, it's really, really important. Now, your personal opinion is whether you like it or not. That's up to you. But I'm just sort of going to try and get it across in the best ways, how we sort of tend to use that or how it can be used.
Awesome. So let's get into it, because like I say, you've gone into even more detail about kind of time frame and how long we've been at certain score lines and stuff like that, which is fantastic. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into it now. Let me just get to the next slide. Bear with me. So yeah, so I know a lot of people will kind of, talk about XG for certain specific matches, which we did go through on this in terms of quality chances. But a lot of the analysis, the continuing analysis, is done on like a rolling basis, which is where I think some of the confusion was kind of set up.
Yeah, it like I say, I'll go back to what I say. People might say, well, it's just fancy graphs and it's all just numbers and things like this. But it's essential. If you don't want to sort of think about it or be like that and you're happy with the way it is, that's great. But there's so many people that really sort of take a great interest in this, and it gives a better measure of performance than we've ever had in football, and we use it a lot. It's not just XG, as I say, there's many other stats, but for here we can see, for instance, you can see, well, I've put an arrow there where Unai Emery is appointed. Simple as that. So he's appointed on the 1st of November. We can see Gerrard's reign before that, where we were letting in sort of a lot. We were giving up a lot of high quality chances. When you can see it's nearly touching sort of nearly 2 every game, and not so many goals, efforts per game. So
yeah,
it's really sort of a mixture of the both. Now, when Emery comes in, we can see a rise in the goals per game, in the XG per game. So we're creating a lot more chances. We're conceding a lot less chances. We can see it rises up. And as the time goes on, we've seen, I think Emery's sort of like 16 games now. I think we're up to about 31 games Villa played. Is it 30 or 30 games played? Sorry.
Yeah.
So he's kind of had 15 games, give or take. He's had a few more, but he's 15 games, give or take. So this is where I think things went a little bit awry in the word lucky. Now, we can see, as a Villa fan, I monitor this throughout the season, as many others I'm sure do. Villa have been giving up a lot of high-quality chances in games. Now, we've not been lucky to win games. We've just won games. So, we're not just, it is what it is. Teams get hot streaks. You can underperform XG, you can overperform XG. We saw at Manchester City at the weekend, they actually got out XG'd, if you want, by Leicester City, but it still won the game. So it's just a stat on its own. You can take it as how you want it. It's across over the season that I think it benefits us a lot more as analysts, maybe.
Yeah. And also as a coach and a manager, you would say, like, okay, the analyst would say, like, we're creating so many great chances because our XG is really high, but our goals per game isn't as high. So what do we need to do? And then the manager would go, okay, well, I either need to buy a new striker, or I need to kind of coach the strikers to work to be more clinical, or
Exactly. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
exactly that. But we divide it up into XG from set plays. How are we creating? What the quality of the chances we're creating from set plays? Anything like that. We can, open play chances. Where are we creating the most XG from? Who is creating the most XG? And we can link it between players. There's expected assists. There's everything else. Now, if you don't like the expected stats, again, that's fine. But we use it as a really, really good measure of performance, and it is.
Brilliant. And then what are we talking about? Is this just give us a bit of an explanation on this, because this looks excellent in terms of what this is kind of telling us.
So anyone who's interested in any sort of stat for Aston Villa, I suggest you click that link on the bottom of it, or you take a screenshot of the link and go on it. It's one of the best stats that you will ever see. So it gives a performance of any, I think it's the top 5 leagues, and you can sort of put in the game state, and you can see your XG performance and your goals against, etc., in a certain game state. So here we've gone at Aston Villa when 0-0. It's really quite difficult for me to see because it's small, but we can see at 0-0, they create chances and they don't let a great deal come towards them. I can't remember. I've got it written down on my piece of paper. So at 0-0, our XG, we create 1.24, but we actually score 2.5 goals. So again, we're overperforming that XG. Now, this is what people took the issue with, but that means we are being clinical. We're taking our chances and everything else. Our expected goals is 0.9, against is 0.9. We're only conceding 0.6. So again, we're overperforming. So we're giving up high quality chances, but we're not conceding as many goals to them chances. Again, that's overperformance. The second one, when we're 1-0 up, is when things sort of go a little bit. And I think this is what the video that we are all talking about was alluding to a little bit. So 1-0 up, when we're 1-0 up, Villa tend to back off a little bit. They can see they don't create as many chances. It's 0.87 XG, but yet we're still scoring at 1.29. Again, that's overperformance. So the chances we're creating are not great, but when we do, we're scoring them. Expected goals against is 1.33, and we're only conceding 0.97. So again, that's overperformance. So again, it's really interesting to see when in different game states how we sort of respond and how we're creating and how we're not. So it is overperformance. Therefore, it's not lucky, but that's what he was kind of trying to sort of allude to. It's really difficult for me not to sort of say what it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think you've explained it perfectly. And this is again the XG performance when 1-0 up. So I guess this is bringing it more into clarification against other teams.
Yeah, this is the dashboard that I'm talking about. So go on the app, everyone, have a look at it, and sort of you can adjust the tenures, you can adjust the sort of. I've started this. This is just from when Unai Emery took over on the 1st of November. This is just from then on in, and this is when we are 1-0 up. Now we have spent, as it says at the bottom, more time 1-0 up than in any other game state bar drawing, which is the most common for a great deal of teams. Apart from the top side, Man City, you spend sort of a great deal more time winning. Have a look for yourselves, but this is what I'm talking about. It's just you can see the stats there. So things sort of do change a little bit, and this is when we talk about overperformance or underperformance. Again, whether you like it or not, it is what it is. The numbers speak for themselves.
Brilliant, mate. This is just fantastic. And I think I think we've got one more. This is kind of our points. I think this is like a expected points.
Yeah.
So this might make you popular, mate. I don't know.
Well, it is what it is. This is all sort of based on XG and XG against and everything else. Now, we can see, again, when Emery was appointed, the points are at 50 now. I think that's the current rate. I think I've done it up until the current day. So that's right. So when you refer to the XG and everything else, in total, we are actually plus 9.7 points better off than our expected points total actually is, given our performance with XG and everything else. So again, this is over the course of a season. This is a good sort of a really good marker and a good sort of a measure of performance of where we are doing well and where we're not so doing well. We can see under Gerrard, things weren't so good. So we can safely say that correlates. I think every fan would agree that we were poor under Gerrard, and that is related in the first sort of 13, 14 games of the season. So therefore, people would then agree that that is correct.
Yeah. It's just when, it's that lucky word, isn't it? And then people just don't maybe understand the context of it. But I think you've explained it perfectly. And also, like, let's just see it as a positive. Like, players are playing really well. Mings and Konsa, we've waxed lyrical over them. Like, they're playing brilliantly as a centre half partnership. The midfield are playing really well. Louise is playing brilliantly. Moreno's growing every game, like I said. Ashley Young at 37, nearly 38, is playing brilliantly well. And Ollie Watkins is pretty much nearly every shot he has is a goal. So, let's bask in the glory.
Yeah, I think you're right though. I think people heard the word lucky and they didn't really listen to anything else after that. Maybe I think their minds were already a little bit tight, as was mine a little bit to an extent. It's like, but you follow the video through and just watch it and just think about what's actually being said. And when you look at it, like I've explained it sort of there, a lot of that correlates to what we're seeing on the pitch. So therefore, in my mind, XG is not rubbish because it correlates to what is being seen on the pitch. It's just whether you choose to see it that way.
Yeah. Now, another team that will that do look at statistics and do really look at XG and X threat and player stats is Brentford, who we face on the weekend. Obviously, not playing particularly well, not getting great results, but it's going to be another tough game, mate.
Yeah, it will be, and I think away from home is where where managers sort of really try to test their mettle, if you like. And Brentford is a tough place to go, as we know. So it will be interesting to see how we get on there because they will sit a bit deeper, probably with a back five as well. So Watkins will have a bit of a different sort of different test ahead of him, I think, and wingers are going to be especially important.
Yeah, wingers and they play a lot of direct balls, so it's going to be second balls and defense. As the defense is going to have to be really on their game. So a different test, and we don't generally do too well at Brentford away. So we bask in the glory for a few days of the Newcastle game, but it's back to the grind for the players for certainly ready for Saturday, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, and that's all we can do, innit? Is just sort of keep going at them, really. And I think they're doing ever so well. We've got a decent run in. We can't really argue. A couple of tough games probably, but we've got a good run in, and let's just hope we can create those high quality chances.
100%. Well, Gareth, once again, phenomenal research and analysis. Guys, I can't say it enough. Please hit that like button. Please do hit that subscribe button. It really does help us produce shows like this and get your comments in. And if there's anything that you've learned from this or you want to see more of, please do let us know. Gareth, I always ask you, where can people find you? You were quite popular this week, I think. So get your Twitter handle out. Where can people find you,
that Karate JC. Yeah, I just hope I've explained it in a way that sort of doesn't. I'm not changing anyone's opinion. I'm just trying to explain it is a metric on its own. That's simple as that.
Fantastic, mate. Well, you've really explained it really well. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Help us grow. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. We're talking about this. As always, remember, we all follow the Villa. Thanks, everyone.